they got a new baseball team out in Los Angeles now. What's in it? The Angels. Yeah, the Angels. They crazy. We was at the opening game, and about 4 rows sitting down in front of us, there was a guy sitting there. He just come to this country from Scotland, see? Like in Scotland, they don't know too much about baseball, but these are very enthusiastic people because, I mean, everything, they went along with everything that was going on. Every time the crowd, somebody would get a hit, out of the crowd would holler, "Run, baby, run!" The Scotsman, after everybody else got through, would stand up all by himself and say, "Run, man, run." One guy came up, he got a long hit, the crowd hollered, "Run, baby, run!" After everybody else got through, the Scot stood up, he said, "Run, man, run!" Next guy come up, the pitcher threw him 1 ball, 2 balls, 3 balls, 4 balls. The guy started walking toward first. The Scotch jumped up. He said, "Run, man, run!" Little guy sitting down below him said, "Hey, baby, he don't have to run this time. He got 4 balls." The Scotsman said, "Walk proudly, man. Walk proudly." That's why children are like they are today. This lady sent this little boy to the store one day. He's a youngster. He's about 9 years old. His name was Johnny. We use Johnny because, that's common anyhow. So he said, "Johnny," she said, "I want you to go to the store." She said, "I want you to go get me a pound of peas." Little boy said, "Okay, Mama." So he started out the house, and just as he started out, his mama said, "Look, why are you at the store?" She said, Miss Brown's been sick. She lives right next to the store. Ask the grocer how Miss Brown is." Little boy said, "Mama, I don't believe I can remember all that." He said, "All you got to do is keep repeating to yourself on the way to the store, a pound of peas and how's Miss Brown? And you'll have it by the time you get there." The boy said, "Okay, Mama." So he started on the way to the store. Pound of peas, how's Miss Brown? Pound of peas, how's Miss Brown? Pound of peas, how's Miss Brown? 1 mile. Pound of brown peas. Pea, Miss Brown, no. Down brown pea on Miss Brown. Well, by the time he got to the store, he had it just right. He ran into the grocery and said, "A pound of peas, how's Miss Brown?" The grocer said, "Split her whole." The boy said, "Her did." Girls, stay single. I mean, this is a fact. Stay single. Don't get hooked up with nobody with no papers. I mean, this is bad because single girls have all the fun, but here's what I want to know. Why do they all keep a diary? They got to know when, why, how much, where. I mean, this is the fact. They got to know definitely what's going on all the time. I was over at this chick's house. She and I have been going together for about 4 or 5 years. She had her 75th birthday the other day. And I don't mess with no young girls. Don't you forget it. And there she was sitting there, so she asked me in a minute. She said, "Excuse me." She had to go to the respiratory. I haven't found out where that was yet. So while she was gone, she had a diary laying there, and I peeked through her diary, and this is the way she spent the first day in 1962. It says she got out of bed, put on a robe, pulled up the shade, uncovered the parrot, went to the kitchen, turned on the gas, put on the coffee, and the telephone rang. A voice said, "Hey, baby, I just got in from St. Paul. Get ready. I'll be right over." She hung up the phone, took off the coffee, turned off the gas, went to her room, pulled down the shade, took off her robe, covered the parrot, got into bed, and the parrot said, "Damn, short day, wasn't it?" I feel like the Chinaman that came here, and he didn't know too much about this country, but he was a big shot in his country, so they sent him $100 every week. He took his $100 to the bank. The first week he took his $100 to the bank, he handed it to the teller. The teller says, "You have a check for $100. He said, "But you see, with the fluctuating market the way it is here in this country, your check is only worth $95. Chinaman said, "Very sorry, I give you a check for $100. Would like $100, please." He said, "I told you with the fluctuating market the way it is, your check is only worth $95. The Chinaman took it, he went away, he came back the next week with another check for $100. He handed it to the teller. The teller said, "Here's your $93. He said, "Very sorry, I give you a check for $100. He said, "Look, buddy, I told you with the fluctuating market the way it is." He said, "This week, your check is only worth $93. Next week he came back, he got $90. Chinaman couldn't take it any longer. The next week he came back, handed the check to $100 to the teller. The teller gave him $85.50. He said, "Now I want to explain to you." The Chinaman said, "Me no, flucked again." I mean, no kidding. I beg your pardon. Yeah, well, everybody makes them. I mean, this young lady said I made a mistake. Fellas, nowadays, when a man makes a mistake, he got to take care of that mistake until it's 18 years old. There was a mother one day talking to her little mistake. And they were standing in the kitchen because I got a handkerchief. And she was telling her daughter, she said, you know, daughter, it's that time of the month. I think you better run over to your daddy's house and get the monthly payment. Little girl said, okay, mama. So she skipped over to her daddy's house, knocked on the door. Her daddy opened the door. He said, come right in, little girl. He said, listen, isn't this your 18th birthday? Little girl said, yes, it is. He said, ha ha. He said, here, you take your mama this money and tell her that's the last payment she's gonna ever get. And watch the expression on her face. Little girl ran home. She said, mama, this man told me to give you this money and tell you it was the last payment you was gonna get and to watch the expression on your face. Her mama said, you go back and tell that man he ain't your daddy and watch the expression on his face. That's like the little boy ran into the house one day. He just come home from school, so he ran up to his father. His father said, son, how'd you do in school today? He said, oh, I did pretty good. He said, I got 95 in my spelling bee. Father said, you got what? He said, I got 95. He said, you mean you missed one word? Little boy said, mm-hmm. He said, well, what was the word you missed? Little boy said, you can't talk plain, Daddy. What did you say? The daddy said, I said, what was the word you missed? He said, posse. Daddy said, no wonder you missed it. You can't even pronounce it. You know what I'm saying? You hear about the two hillbilly boys? One of them had been to the city for about a week and a half, and he has got his thing together. So, and that's hard to do. No, really. I'm trying to get my thing together. And, don't you me, I know what I'm talking about. And here, one of them was coming down the road, and the other one was stashed out by the cornfield. And he was full of corn. So his buddy walked up, he said, hey, there's Jim. Said, how you doing? He said, oh, I'm doing pretty good. Said, you know, I've been to the city for the last week or so, and said, I've been hanging out with some of the cats, and been getting my thing together. His old buddy said, I've been getting my thing together. He said, why you been gone? He said, you know that old girl I was a-courting before you left? But he said, yeah, I remember. He said, I done courted her. He said, I went by her house night before last and I took her a box of candy. She let me kiss her. He said, then when I went back to the house last night, I took her a bottle of perfume. She let me rub her knee. His old slick buddy said, well, I guess if you go back tonight, you're gonna take your rubbers, huh? He said, hell, if it's raining, I ain't even going. Jim Fish knows everything. Everybody knows Jim Fish. Jim Fish was standing on 125th and 7th Avenue. And there was a fella riding down the street. He just got out of a cab, and he didn't know where he was in New York. He only had about 8 hours in New York. He was on his way to Europe. So he met Jim Fish, and he was took. So they were standing there talking. Jim Fish told him he knew everybody everywhere anyhow. This guy was a gambling man. He said, Jim Fish, I bet you $100 I can take you to somebody you don't know. Jim Fish said, you got a bet. So he took him to Washington. And there standing out on the White House lawn was Jacqueline and Carolyn. He said, Jim Fish, I bet you don't know Carolyn. Jim Fish said, you watch. Hey, Carolyn turned around and said, oh, Uncle Jim, Uncle Jim. Ran and jumped in old Jim Fish's arm. Jim Fish gave her a hug, dropped her right quick. Yeah, I said, well, you do know a few people, don't you? He said, look, I bet you I know somebody you don't know. He said, yeah, who is that? He said, Eichmann. He said, me and Brother Eichmann? Said, we burn all y'all, we pretty tight. So he dropped that subject right quick. He said, Jim Fish, I'll bet you $1,000 to 1 that I can take you to somebody you don't know nothing about. Jim Fish said, you got a bet. So they got on a jet right out there at Idlewild, and they flew direct to Rome. And that day, the Pope was talking to the masses, and the crowd was big. And there was Jim Fish and my man standing way in the back. And the guy said to Jim Fish, he says, Jim Fish, there's gonna be a man step out there on that balcony in a few minutes, and I know you don't know nothing about him. Jim Fish said, who is that? He said, the Pope. He said, give me 15 minutes. Jim Fish wiggled his way through the audience. About 10 minutes later, 2 guys stepped out on the balcony. And right next to this cat was an Army colonel with a pair of binoculars. And he had the balcony in view. So the guy said, hey, who's them 2 guys that just stepped out on the balcony? Army colonel said, I don't know who that cat is up there waving at everybody, but that other stud is Jim Fish.